2014's Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the most pleasant cinematic surprises in recent memory. The idea of a space-based band of Marvel misfits, including a walking tree and a talking raccoon, being so popular with a commercial movie audience was unprecedented, but the movie grossed $773 million worldwide, and was universally praised by both movie fans and critics alike. Like any Marvel movie these days, a heck of a lot of work went into it, and in this video, we'll take a look at some of the things that went on behind the scenes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's the best way of keeping up to date with all of Screen Rant's great new videos.
I am Groot!
Vin Diesel said, "I am Groot," over 1,000 times. Apart from that one highly emotional scene in which he said, "We are Groot," the only words Groot ever says in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are, "I am Groot." With that in mind, you'd think Vin Diesel would have had a very easy job of voicing the character, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's more to just saying those 3 words when it comes to giving Groot a voice. Each line has to be emotive in a different way, and Vin Diesel actually had to say the line more than 1,000 times in order to perfect the character's dialogue for the whole movie. Of course, while the untrained ear only hears those 3 words, those who know Groot well, namely Rocket, can understand exactly what he's meaning when he says them. Vin Diesel was given a list of things that Groot was actually meaning, which gave him an idea of how to say every single line in terms of tone and loudness. Contrary to finding the whole process tedious, Diesel actually appreciated how much work went into his performance, stating, "I was really lucky, because I had a director who was willing to indulge and wanted to really capture all the nuances of this character." How Groot was made. Speaking of Groot, creating him was obviously a very complex process. It obviously wasn't a case of simply putting a man in a costume, not by any stretch of the imagination. A VFX company called MPC were hired to create the tree-like character, with the most difficult issue for them being how to make a tall, minimally expressive animated tree with few lines seem somewhat human. MPC quickly concluded that Groot's wooden composition wouldn't give him the sort of flexibility and elasticity that human characters have in their faces, so having him express emotions would be tough. They quickly came up with the idea that his emotion would therefore come from his eyes, designing and building extremely complex eye dynamics. Regarding his body, the texture was based on a variety of trees at London's Kew Gardens. Various splotches of leaves and moss were added for accent, and the whole thing was modeled digitally as an interconnected network web of vines and roots, kind of like human muscle fibers. So any movement in one area of his body directly affected other areas. Oh, and James Gunn himself portrayed the baby version who danced at the end. To summarize, it was all extremely intricate and very, very clever stuff. How Rocket was made. Well, if you thought making Groot sounded complicated, it didn't have anything on how Rocket was made. Because the workload was so big for each character, a different company was hired to create each of them. In Rocket's case, it was a company called Framestore. Framestore had to find the balance between the outright craziness of a walking, talking raccoon who loves big weapons, the serious emotional elements of his role in the film, and matching Bradley Cooper's voice performance for the character. Each individual hair was created from scratch, and rather than map out his entire furry coat using few sections, Framestore strove for a more realistic look by simulating every single hair on Rocket's body. They also worked out how each one interacted with his other hairs. His distinctive markings were the result of changing the color maps on individual hairs and using a mixing effect to create a speckled look on certain ones. As for his physical presence, a variety of techniques were used to simulate Rocket in scenes with human actors, with Sean Gunn standing in for the character at certain times. James Gunn insisted that less is more when it comes to Rocket, so he was never overacted. All things considered, an awful lot of effort went into creating him.
He's coming back for her. And when he does, that's when you...
Why would I put my finger on his throat?
Dave Bautista's makeup took 5 hours to apply. Although the likes of Groot and Rocket were obviously the hardest characters to create for Guardians of the Galaxy, by virtue of the fact that they were CGI, the practical effects in the movie weren't exactly a piece of cake to get right either. In fact, in order to get into character as Drax, Dave Bautista had to be in makeup for 5 hours on every single day of shooting. His look required 5 makeup artists to apply no less than 18 prosthetic pieces, because of the fact that Drax wasn't a single color, like, say, Gamora, Ronan, Yondu, or Karina. Bautista's makeup job required various paint layers and chemicals to be added to his skin. Unfortunately for the former WWE superstar, this meant he couldn't even sit down for the entire 5 hours. He had to stand with his arms out to his sides, resting on posts, being as patient as a saint the entire time. That wasn't the end of his ordeal, however, as he had to spend another hour and a half at the end of the day getting it all removed. His professionalism shone through during his time on set because, according to co-star Chris Pratt, Bautista didn't complain even once. Wow. Chris Pratt lost 60 pounds to play Star-Lord. It goes without saying that Chris Pratt got himself in great shape to play Peter Quill, otherwise known as Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. It also goes without saying that before he played the character, he was a little on the tubby side, and the actor himself would be the first person to admit that. However, what you probably didn't realize is the extent of his physical transformation. Pratt told James Gunn that he'd need to lose 50 pounds in 6 months for the movie, but he went on to lose 60 pounds thanks to an extremely strict diet plan from nutritionist Phil Goglia and an utterly torturous workout regimen designed by personal trainer Duffy Gaver. The food was all extremely clean, and the first 2 months of the workout were all to build muscle. The next 2 months were equal parts bodybuilding and conditioning, and the final month was mainly conditioning via cardio circuits, swimming, mountain biking, and faster timed sessions. The conditioning workouts also contain treadmill and rower circuits mixed in with weightlifting or calisthenics. All things considered, it's fair to say the whole thing worked out very well, and Pratt has managed to maintain his great shape to this day.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
Iron Man almost appeared. It goes without saying that Guardians of the Galaxy was a risk. None of the members of the titular team were known beyond comic book circles, and to say that they were a bit weird and left field would be an understatement to say the least. And with that in mind, Marvel Studios considered a number of options to ensure the movie would be a success. One of those options in early drafts of the movie included a cameo from Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Stark is headed off into space to join the Guardians in the comic book, so it's not out of the question for that to potentially happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, although it's hard to see that being the nature of the proposed cameo back in 2014. Regardless, had it happened, it would certainly have tied the film together tighter into the MCU, and there's no doubt it would have performed even better at the box office with Robert Downey Jr. in it. That's just undeniable. Why the cameo never happened remains a mystery, but a number of factors probably contributed to it. The most obvious one being that it would have felt like it was being shoehorned in. It's not as though it performed badly without him anyway. There was almost a Darth Vader Easter egg. Both the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Star Wars franchise are now owned by Disney, which has fans of the two franchises dreaming of a crossover. Let's be honest, it'll never happen for a multitude of reasons, but we'd all love to see Hulk fighting Yoda, Thor going up against Luke Skywalker, and Loki facing off against Darth Vader. The next best thing almost happened in Guardians of the Galaxy when Kevin Feige came very close to having a Darth Vader Easter egg in the movie, and the idea actually came to him before Disney acquired Lucasfilm. He wanted Star-Lord to be talking to an alien character, just as a Darth Vader action figure fell from his bag. Star-Lord is, of course, from Earth, and he was a kid when he was taken by Yondu and the Ravagers, so it would have made sense for him to like Star Wars, and fans would have loved to see Vader show up in a Marvel movie. Instead, Feige and the team behind Guardians of the Galaxy opted to give Star-Lord a Walkman, and we all know how awesome that worked out in the end, as it formed the basis for one of the most iconic movie soundtracks in recent memory.
Hey, you know what? There's another name you might know me by. Star-Lord.
Everyone wanted to be Star-Lord. Although the Guardians of the Galaxy were barely known in mainstream media prior to their first movie, the role of their leader Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, was extremely sought after, and by a plethora of big-name actors to boot. Brace yourself for this list. The likes of the Danish Girl's Eddie Redmayne, Zero Dark 30's Joel Edgerton, Snowden's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, A Quiet Place's John Krasinski, Breaking Bad's Aaron Paul, Supernatural's Jensen Ackles, American Beauty's Wes Bentley, Boardwalk Empire's Jack Houston, Blindspot's Sullivan Stapleton, 24's Logan Marshall Green, Tron Legacy's Garrett Hedlund, Private Practice's Chris Lowell, X-Men's James Marsden, The Wayback's Jim Sturgis, The Hobbit's Lee Pace, and Smallville's Michael Rosenbaum all wanted to play the character, but it was obviously Parks and Rec's Chris Pratt who fought off all the competition to win the role, which turned out to be a fantastic and inspired casting. And It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia's Glenn Howerton was the director's surprise second choice. Of course, Lee Pace actually ended up portraying the movie's villain, the Kree warlord Ronan, the Accuser, while Michael Rosenbaum went on to play a small role as Martinex Tanaga of the Stakar Ravager clan in the brilliant 2017 sequel.
I look around at us. You know what I see? Losers.
2.5 months of wasted practice. There were some seriously kick-ass fight scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they were all quite clearly intricately choreographed by industry experts. There was the scene on Xandar where Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, and Groot first met. There was the scene in the prison known as the Kiln when the titular team made their escape thanks to Rocket's great plan, and there was the big fight scene on board the enormous Dark Aster against Ronan's forces near the movie's climax, to name but a few. However, one of the scenes that Chris Pratt and Dave Bautista trained the longest for didn't even make it into the final movie. The superstar pair spent 2.5 months preparing and rehearsing for a scene in which they would have fought each other, presumably in the Kiln when they first met and Drax attacked Gamora due to her association with Thanos and Ronan. However, on the Friday night before the Monday that they were scheduled to film the scene, director James Gunn made the decision that the fight wouldn't work on camera. So he scrapped the entire sequence that they dedicated so much time to perfecting. And that must have been a real bummer for the two of them.
How could I think Tavon could contain whatever was within the orb?
What do you still have it for?
Deleted scenes. Like any movie, not every scene that was filmed for Guardians of the Galaxy made it into the final version. In this case, however, almost all of that unused footage made it onto the internet, and it makes for some very interesting viewing. The scenes in question included a half-finished scene in which Groot gets distracted by a bug while him and Rocket look like something from a PlayStation 1 game, an extended version of the scene in which Star-Lord accuses Rocket of fake laughing, a scene in which Star-Lord flirts with a blue-skinned alien called Tiasha, a scene in which Roman Day tries to convince Daenerys and Saul that the Kiln is too brutal a place to send the Guardians, a scene showing the mean guard who stole Star-Lord's Walkman dancing to the music on it, a montage involving Electric Light Orchestra's single, Livin' Thing, a scene showing adoptive sisters Gamora and Nebula having a hostile chat that turns into a physical tussle, a scene from the trailers in which Star-Lord and Gamora checked each other out while they were changing their clothes, a scene in which Drax explained the meaning behind each of his distinctive tattoos, and an additional cameo by Stan Lee showing him as an exhibit in the Collector's Museum. Which of these scenes would you have liked to see in the final movie? Let us know in the comments. And that's the end of our video. Did you enjoy it? Do you know any other interesting facts about 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy? Make sure you let us know, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos just like this one. Bye for now.